Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX consultancy, and welcome to episode 119, Content Design, Content Strategy, and UX Writing. This one was requested over in our Slack workspace, which of course is free to join, deltacx.link/join Slack. We now have over 800 members, though I'd say about 120 are active at any given time, so come on over. There is no charge at all. So thanks to everybody for requesting this particular topic. I was very grateful to find two super people who are going to talk to you about this stuff today. Remember, we are live on YouTube and LinkedIn Live. If you have any questions, just drop them into the chat room and I will shout them out at an opportune moment. So let's bring in our guests and get to know them. Let's start with Jessica. Can you please spell your name and tell everybody all about you?
Of course. It's Jessica Smith, Jessica. Smith, like it sounds, Smith. I appreciate you asking. I'm a longtime tech and content writer for the last 4 years, exclusively focusing on UX content, with a specialty in UX writing and product writing. And about a year ago, I started Adelante, the UX Writers Career Group, in an effort to sort of give a place to network and learn for those who are out of work in the early pandemic. And so that's been a great space and a great place to meet folks. Right now we're on hiatus, but you can look us up on our LinkedIn page. If you just look at Adelante UX Writers, you should be able to find it. I'm also a developmental editor for the UX Writers Collective. So you may have seen them around, and I help with some of their things there.
Excellent, excellent. Great to meet you. These people are new to me, so I'm so excited. And hello, Charlene and Dilip in the chat room. Charlene sends a smiley face. Suzanne, please spell your name and tell us about you.
Sure. Hi, my name is Suzanne Richards. That's Suzanne, Richards, Richards. And I call myself a content designer. But I also call myself a UX writer, and sometimes I call myself a strategist. And we'll go more into why I might say that. I have been, let's just say, I have been a content developer for many years. And I have been specifically in the design department of some companies for about 5 years. And I got to tell you, it is the best job I've ever had because I love people and I love to write things that help people and solve their problems.
Excellent.
It's nice to be here.
Yes, thanks for coming. And Stephanie, who was our guest in episode 118, says super happy about this topic because it's super confusing. So let's start out with some easy questions. They'll all be easy, I promise. So first, can each of you tell us what is content design and what is content strategy? Maybe Jessica, can you start with that one?
Yeah, this may be a little bit of a non-answer or sort of a you choose your own adventure answer. But Suzanne knows this conversation is something that's always going on in we'll say the UX content. I use UX content as an umbrella term for all of these different types of roles or different names for roles. Basically what I've observed is in Europe and other regions, content design tends to be a sort of umbrella UX content and strategy within where UX writing and product writing are tools of content design. But over here in the US, content design seems to be fairly synonymous with UX writing or a lot of Venn diagram overlap there. And I have to say, I really would encourage people to read pieces by Christina Halverson, Rachel McConnell. They've written a lot about these, and there's lots of other folks who have written about it as well to kind of explore and see what sort of fits within your design perspective. But basically, they're all closely related, and you might have different emphases. I call myself either a content designer or a UX writer, and they're somewhat synonymous, but they're both overarching, use design thinking, and use other key tools to do the work of designing with words. So,
designing with words. Suzanne, what would you add to that?
So maybe, so I think how I'm going to add to that is I might explain some job description things that might sound more like content strategist exclusively. And I really hate to do that. And you know what? I'm just going to explain why right now.
Go for it.
If you are, and I'm going to come from the lens of product content strategy because that's where the bulk of my experience is. So when you are a product content person, your job is to know your product inside and out. That means what it does, what it can solve, and where the company wants to take it. And then you also need to know the customers for who are going to use it, what they need, what they worry about, and what keeps them up at night, and how they are going to relate to your product. And through that, once you know that, you're going to figure out how to speak to them. You can't do any of those things if you don't have some kind of strategy. And strategy comes from, so what is strategy? Strategy comes from why are you even doing this? What do you want to achieve with what you're going to do? So let me give you an example. Let's say that you have a product and it's free now, but you are going to improve it and then charge a fee for it. Your strategy for this product or product feature might be to really demonstrate the value that the customer is going to get if they use your product, because now you're going to charge for it. So you need to be able to back that up. So the design part might be how you do that. How do you talk to people in a way that makes them feel like they're getting a lot of value?
Without lying.
How did I do?
Hold on, I've got a sound for that. There you go. Beautiful. What is the difference, would you say, between, like, is UX writing different from other writing? Maybe start with Jessica again. Is UX writing different from other writing?
Absolutely. Usually when I am giving a talk about UX writing, sort of UX writing 101, either to teams or peers or even to maybe folks who are newer to UX writing in general, I say, I juxtapose, for example, copywriting with UX writing. Those are two very, copywriting is a well-known form of writing. And so I use those as examples. And so there's again, to go back to a Venn diagram, where in the middle, there's a lot of common tools, right? We have brand identity, business goals, creativity, vocabulary. There's all these things that are common tools and skills of copywriters and UX writers, but the main difference is their goals. The UX writer is writing with the user in mind, so they're user-centered, whereas the copywriter is writing for persuasion. And both are concerned with business goals, both are concerned with lots of different things, but copywriters, for example, are focused on that persuasion. Not to say that copywriters don't think about usability or any of those other things, but those are their key goals. So, for example, I had a recruiter reach out to me once about a UX writing role, and you could tell they were trying to be like persuasive and jazzy in the way they were describing the role. And they said, "We need someone who can write a heart-stopping headline." And I was like, that sounds more like copywriting. And a little bit less
like journalism.
Like UX. Yeah. So maybe heart-stopping wasn't the exact adjective, but basically they were trying to get at this sort of persuasion and creativity element. And UX writers use those tools, persuasion, and in a user-friendly way, but the focus is user-friendliness. We'd rather a headline or a title or a label be simple and clear than creative or punny or what have you. But there's also other types of writing, like technical writing and journalism, content writing, content marketing, and there's lots of overlap, but it all comes back to UX writing is user focused.
Thank you. Suzanne, you agree, disagree? We're allowed to disagree with each other here. What do you want to add? I promise you'll go first next time.
Wow, this is a big one. No, don't. That's okay. Okay, so, it really depends on where you work. So I currently work at PayPal, and then before that I worked at QuickBooks. And these are products that, you're using, and then all of a sudden, there may be a situation where something pops in and they're like, hey, you want to do this better, faster, more? You can. It's going to cost you $10, but you can do it. Check it out. So is that copywriting?
Is that marketing writing?
It's sales. It's
for sure.
Sales. It's in product sales. So it is a part of UX writing, and it, like I said, it depends on where you work. And she is right. This whole thing about having there be a whole lot of persuasion and getting people to start using the product, where UX writing and content design is focused on people who are already using it. So any persuasion you use is going to maybe try to get them to upgrade, pay more, do more,
stick around,
get more. Yeah.
Got it. Cool.
So that's where I was
there.
That.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, everybody in the chat room, if you have questions, don't forget to post them. Sorry, Suzanne, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that one of the biggest differences, if I were going to explain what the difference was in 1 minute, I would say that, and I've been both, I've been an advertising copywriter and a UX writer. UX writers cannot work alone. They can't. Because you've got to be really obsessed with the customer and what's happening. And with copywriting, I can write 10 headlines and never talk to a customer. I can write tons of copy and never talk to a customer. All I really need to know is, and I don't mean to say only, it's not an easy job, but I mean, I need to know, what we want our audience to do.
Does that mean you're interacting more with UX researchers?
With copywriting? No, I would say that all you really need to do, again,
well, with really UX writing, like the UX writing, the UX writing side does that require you to interface more with the researchers and the designers?
Oh, yes. And most emphatic yes. And lots of times with advertising copywriting, you don't interface with anyone. Maybe just the brief and your ad director, your manager. But with UX writing, you have to,
I wanted to ask,
very involved.
I spent 2 years contracting at Macy's up in San Francisco, and we had to semi-struggle with a lot of romance copy that came from manufacturers that had to end up on the Macy's site. And I'm calling it romance copy, but I'm not I might be using the wrong word. What do you call it when there is this copy? We used to joke about we used to get these descriptions of Kate Spade plates, and it would be like, memories of timeless fireflies, and be this stuff. And I would go, great, can I put it in the dishwasher? Well, what do you call that copy where it seems to be these marketing and emotional things about it, but it might be missing some of the important points that a user really needs to know, like dishwasher friendly, microwave safe? Is there a name for that kind of copy? I always think of it as romance copy, but I might be using the wrong word.
That sounds
Suzanne?
like catalog copy.
Catalog copy.
That sounds
Jessica,
like catalog copy.
Do you have a word for that?
It sounds to me like kind of like perfume commercial copy, like it's setting a scene. Like if you notice perfume commercials don't focus on describing it at all. It really is like setting a scene. And not that like affecting emotion is a bad thing. That's a very powerful tool in copywriting, but there are definitely lots of different approaches to copywriting for sure, but it feels perfumey.
Perfumey, I like it. So I know a lot of times our audience is very interested to get into the jobs and realms of the guests we have on the show. If someone wants to learn more about shifting into more content design or writing, or shifting some of the writing they've been doing towards UX writing, do you have any suggested books or courses? Suzanne, maybe start with you. Anything like that that you can suggest to the audience?
Yes, I do. It's right over there. I'm looking at it. It's called Solving Product Design Exercises or Solving Product Design. Yes. When Jessica's on, I'm going to go run over and get that book.
Okay.
So what it is it's a book. What it is it's a book that takes you right into the writing exercise that you no doubtly are going to be taking or at least discussing when you are in the pipeline for a job. Because the design department is going to want to know how you approach problems, and they need to know that you understand what you need to know in order to even start writing. And there's quite a few things that you need to know before you start writing. So I love this book because it really it made me list out what is the problem that I'm really trying to solve? What is the problem? Is it the right problem? And how do I know it's the right problem? Who are the stakeholders? Who is going to work with me? What is my role going to be? And then that's just starting out. But I won't give the whole book away. The book is great though. It's a little expensive, but it's worth every penny.
Our audience will pay for quality. Thank you. Jessica, any recommendations of books or online courses? Oh, you're still muted, I think.
Thank you for that. There are so many good ones. I love Strategic Writing for UX by Tori Podmajersky. It's a great overview of UX writing that also is a fairly succinct book. You could probably write volumes on it, but she does it in a really concise way, which probably also speaks to her own writing skills.
I was going to say, eating her own dog food there.
Exactly. But also it's very, it's also very tactical in terms of like giving examples, lots and lots of examples, which is great to see it in action. But also there's some process. You got it. I have
just in case somebody wanted a visual.
Yes, yours has the actual cover on it, but I use mine fairly often, so
mine got wet. Mine got wet, so it's a little beat up, but yes.
But it also is process things and heuristic analysis or evaluation, scorecards, just some really practical things. One of my favorite things is this 30, 60, 90-day plan for starting a UX writing gig, which is such a great tool. But there are so many other ones. One of my other favorite ones, this is more sort of research-based, but it really speaks to voice, which is The Man Who Lied to His Computer. Basically all about human-computer interaction research, Clifford Nass and Karina Yen out of Stanford. And it really speaks to how people do interact with their computers. And the takeaway for UX writers or content designers is voice and tone. Voice and tone is crucial to building trust. If there's inconsistencies in voice and tone, people sense that, even if they're not visibly aware of that. So those are two of my favorites, but there's so many good ones. Writing is Designing, Design for Cognitive Bias. Yeah, some really good ones, but those are a few.
Suzanne, you had something else you were going to hold up and show?
Oh, yeah. So here's the book that I recommend. And the reason I recommend this is because, and this may come up later in our conversation, but I really want I really want listeners to know that this job is writing job, but it is first and foremost a designing job. So that means that if you already have great writing skills, then let's just say I'm not so worried about you. What people are really going to want to know if you work in the design department with them is, can you deconstruct a problem? Can you keep breaking down a problem over and over again until the solutions become kind of obvious? Can you continually ask why and not get so hung up on whether it's a comma or whether we should use a contraction there? I mean, that stuff will all come, but what I really want new people to know is that design is such a huge part of this job. And I'm even going to go as far as to say that the only real difference between you and an interaction designer is that they wireframe and you don't.
Okay, I accept. We have 4 questions in YouTube and 1 in LinkedIn, so I'm going to start throwing these at you, but out of order because we just got an interesting follow-up to, I think, what Jessica was saying. And it's from Ekta, friend of the show, who said, how do you check for inconsistencies in voice and tone? Any tools or techniques?
That's a really great question. And some of these books that some of our favorites have really great guidelines to creating a voice, guidelines to creating sort of the deliverables and tools around voice and tone. So to answer the question more directly, things like, well, you'll have your style guide, which will have a definition of voice. And then you have a definition of voice, which is the thing that doesn't change. It's like your personality is always the same. The voice is always the same throughout the product. So it will define it with some characteristics. Each company is different and how many characteristics. Sometimes it's a spectrum, this, not this. They do it differently. And then there will be examples. This is what this looks like. This is what this doesn't look like. This is what authentic means to us. And then with tone is the emotional depth or the emotional variance, right? Are you being serious because this is a fraud alert? Are you being more friendly and bubbly because this is an onboarding welcome experience? And you might use a tone map for that type of thing where it's kind of people do it different ways, but one example is a sort of X and Y axis of different characteristics of tone. And then you identify types of content that are sort of in those different spaces from serious to jovial or, what have you. So those are a couple examples, but you also have things like word lists. You have thesauruses. So word lists are things that we say, things that we don't say, right? You might have very specific ways of speaking, just like you and I have very different ways of speaking, vocabulary and that kind of thing. Companies the same way. And also a thesaurus, right? We want to speak plainly. So we might create a company thesaurus, not just a random public thesaurus. Instead of saying authentication, we say confirmation at this company, things like that. So
fantastic.
And so, yeah. Go for it, Suzanne.
Amazing, wonderful. And so many questions coming in. Suzanne, anything to add to what Jessica said? Optional?
I think the best kind of voice tone guides are the ones that tell you what we're doing, why we're right, why we want you to do it that way, what it looks like when it's wrong, and what it looks like when it's right. And they have examples. Yes, sometimes you do end up with the content designer who copies straight from the guide. The guide. And we're like, why have we seen? We're on it a million times. Well, it's because it was in the guide. Well, that's okay in the way that, yes, we already know that that's approved. But try to vary it a little. Don't just say we're on it all over the place. Just like what everybody's doing now is, oops, that didn't work. Oh, no, that's not what everyone's doing. Yeah.
Or let's go.
That or the error message of, no, wait, that's not it. What's the error message everyone's doing now, Jessica? Oh my gosh.
That's not quite right or something like that?
Oh yes, something's not right. I've seen that. Oh my God. There are a few different ways to say that, guys.
So true. Friend of the show, Oz,
Anyway.
is here. You can catch him on YouTube as Excel on Fire if you want to learn Microsoft Excel in a fiery way. Hashtag not sponsored. Oz says, I've hired a copywriter in the past who's spooky because she accurately captures my voice. That's a good copywriter, the ability to capture the client's voice. And then he added, not just some generic corporate voice. And Oz has a lot of personality, so that's a very talented copywriter. Fantastic.
Yeah,
I think
it's a really good thing if it's.
yeah, go ahead, Suzanne.
Oh, I was going to say, if you can get a really good, deep understanding of your voice and tone, and it all helps to have some writing talent too. If you can get a really good grasp of your voice and tone guide, it kind of goes with the whole writing thing about learn the rules so you know which ones you can break. Learn how it works and why, and that's how you can branch out and try to write things slightly different way, just so you're not writing the same thing all the time.
Thanks. I'm going to jump to a question we have on LinkedIn, which I cannot put on the screen. I can only put up the YouTube questions, but this is from Dilip, and it says, how do you do UX writing for an application that will be used in different countries? Are there any points to keep in mind? For example, if you're making a banking app, which can be used all over the world.
Oh
Who
my
wants to
God, how
jump
much
on
time
that?
do you have?
We like to jokingly say it's the lightning round. Give us the 2-minute version.
Okay, okay,
I'm not
so
going to put up a
yes,
timer.
you absolutely can do that. You absolutely can do this. Uh, there's a way that when you start writing, there's a way that you learn accessibility and localization, and there are little tidbits, tips and tricks that you learn to write so that when it is localized, and just really quickly, let me tell you what that means. The localization managers live in other countries, and they're going to look at your copy, and they're going to figure out how to say it in the way that they would say it in that country. And oftentimes what happens is they are not looking at the Figma file that you're looking in. They are looking in something that has been broken down by GitHub, and it comes into what looks like an Excel spreadsheet. That means that if you say, use the word it and the thing in one sentence in your page, it might be like the localization manager is going, wait, I don't understand. What's it? Oh, let me go find the right, exactly. So when you write, so for example, at PayPal, I tend to use the word customer a lot, because if I leave it out and say they, then it's not clear if we're talking about which exact customers we're talking about. For example, we're not talking about customers who are just browsing or customers who have already paid. And so we call those past customers and browsing customers, for example. So I have to be very clear. I have to be very clear in times like that, because they have to be able to, that just makes their job easier. Then they don't have to hit the Figma file all the time and try to figure out what I was talking about.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for the lightning round. Jessica, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's a great concrete example of the types of things that you have to think about. I would also make a differentiation between localization and translation. So localization and translation are like, a motorcycle and a sidecar. They're closely related, but they're not necessarily doing the same thing. So translation is literally interpreting the words to a different language, and localization is sort of preparing them to be received in a locality. So like Suzanne was saying, like understanding that in other languages, certain pronouns or certain verbs are done certain ways. So Suzanne isn't doing translation, but she's sort of like laying the ground by writing copy that is localizable and translatable. So she understands, she may not speak 5 to 8 languages, but she understands that she needs to prepare the copy for other languages. So a common example of localizing something, preparing for translation, is understanding that things in other languages go right to left instead of left to right. So thinking about writing the design in a way that is prepared for that. Another example is, how many characters? English characters or take up a little space, but you might have Korean or Arabic characters that take up, or even German that take up many characters. So when you're writing, you have to keep in mind limitations for that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a great question, and it could be a whole book, a whole podcast.
True enough. And all of Oz's message didn't come up, but Oz is letting us know, reminds him of the time he used Google to tell his Brazilian friends he was excited to visit. His friends wrote him back and said that Google announced that he was horny to visit. So be careful of just dumping things into Google Translate, everybody. I'm sure Jessica and Suzanne must have worked at least one job where they thought translation or localization was dumping it into Google Translate. Yes, maybe.
Yeah. You have to be wary.
Yeah, I can think of one thing.
You don't have to name names. That's optional here. Let's go back to an earlier question from Charlene. Thanks for your patience, friend of the show, Charlene. She's wondering, what is the process or technique for testing your work? You know, as designers, we're so used to usability testing and things like that. How do you test your content? Suzanne?
So right now, we are in the process of decoupling our content from our design so that we can better test. However, there are still tests going on, and me personally, and let me just talk about me personally because I can't speak to how others do it, but you can actually learn a lot in a usability test. And how you make sure that you are is you have, first of all, a good relationship with your UX researcher. And if you have a good one, and most are good, they will share their user guide, their study guide with you. And they will say to you, hey, Suzanne, you know, we are testing this. And do you have any specific things you want to know about the content? And of course you do. You want to know if, first of all, you want to know if it's working. You want to know if they get it. You want to know if everything is clear, expectations are clear. But then also you want to know, back to voice and tone again, is this appropriate? Do you feel supported by this company? You know, has your opinion 1 to 5? Do you feel supported by blank company? You don't necessarily have to ask it like that, but these are definitely the things you want to know. Yeah.
Okay, Jessica, please add to that.
Yeah, no, those are excellent questions. Being part of the research and testing process is really key because you do want to call up those things that the writer might be attentive to, language, preference for certain things. Do they have any emotion or reaction to the page that's related to the words? And there's different ways to sort of ask those questions in a way that's open and not leading, right? But it's also important to differentiate between research and testing. Research might be, discovering things or doing competitive research or understanding the customer, the types of customer. And then testing would be actually testing a concept or a product, or which can be low fidelity, just like initial concepts, sometimes even paper concepts if you're doing testing in person, all the way to more high fidelity, like a product that's almost ready to go. That speaks to what Suzanne is talking about with discussion guides, taking a look at those, making sure you're part of the process, even if you can't attend maybe all of the testing sessions. But yeah, it's a really, really important part. And if you read more about testing, there's, I think, Just Enough Research, great book out there, and a bunch of other ones where you can do research in a way that's scrappy too. Because I think when you learn all about the different types of research and testing and quantitative and qualitative, you just think, oh, I need to be a very big company with a very big research budget, which certainly is helpful. But there are ways to do it that are also a little bit more scrappy, but it's very valuable.
Excellent. Thanks. We've got a list of questions, but before we ask those, I want to ask some that I've got on my list. And one of them is, we'll start with Jessica. Can you talk a little bit about what you think are some of the skills and talents that you think that you might need if someone wants to move into content design, strategy, or UX writing?
I'm gonna go back to something that Suzanne said earlier. Writing skills are important for sure, but more fundamental is the ability to solve problems, the ability to listen, the ability to be empathetic, and observe. Those are skills that are incredibly valuable in order to be able to do the problem solving and then get to the piece where you're writing. But I think curiosity is really important. And there's lots of careers that people might be switching from, since UX writing and content design in many ways, UX content, it's been around for a long time, but there's not, to my knowledge, any degree programs, at least in the US. So there's education opportunities, but they're more sort of independent courses. But since those are not super well established, you do have a lot of career switchers, people coming from different backgrounds. So you have folks from journalism, you have folks from all sorts of, and even very non-related fields that can do this. But I think those key things are curiosity, empathy, listening, and problem solving, which again provide that foundation to use those writing skills. Writing skills are valuable. If you hate writing or you're terrible at it, maybe an indicator, but writing isn't. Writing is definitely not the only skill.
Thanks, Suzanne. And also, Charlene's asking a follow-up question. Do you have to have good English skills and good grammar? I would think so, but Suzanne, what do you think?
I'm going to say it really, really helps.
Yeah.
But I will say that I have worked with some content designers that, their hyphen usage is a little inconsistent, and they needed some tweaking here and there, but my gosh, the thinking and the thoughtfulness of the customer, the thought of how the customer would be feeling and thinking right then when they were in that screen. I loved it so much. Who cares? Let's fix it.
Good to have a good team lead.
That is, if you can get your customer to love your product, they will stay and they will tell their friends about it. And that is what makes the stock price go up.
Right.
And that's what
saves marketing,
and I know that sounds crass. I'm sorry.
No,
but that is what really makes, that's what really makes a great product. Nobody's talking about how Slack is such great design. No, everyone loves Slack because of the words. So yeah, words are really important. Make people feel good. Make people feel good and they will like you. They will come back.
You've read everything. You've read everything. Here's a pony. Have you seen that screen on Slack?
They did get rid of that.
I thought I saw that the other day.
Yeah. Because I've done a lot of voice and tone studies, and I use Slack every day, and I haven't seen it, but so I could be wrong. But but it's a good example of, and I did a talk once about voice and tone and products, and when would be a good time to delight. So that's an example of a delighter, and that's another conversation. But another good writing principle to know is to know when it's right to delight. And I took that straight from working at QuickBooks, because that's one of their writing principles. So in that example, Slack, you're done reading, so here's a gift. Right. It's something a little silly, but it's okay. It's not going to interfere with your day. You're already done. It's not like they're giving you a pony right in the middle of you trying to send a message. Right.
Right thing at the right time with the right tone. Yeah, thanks for that.
Right.
Let's throw a couple more questions up here. We're more than halfway done. We've got 20 minutes left. Time flies. We've got a few more questions, and thanks again for joining. We've got Madalena, a friend of the show, and she says, how do you cater to different user personas for a single product from the UX writing point of view? Jessica, do you want to grab that one first? No?
No, that's a really good question. I'm trying to think of like an example to make this more concrete. But basically, I mean, certainly you have different types of users. There are two ways to do it. In my view, and Suzanne can confirm or disagree, but you can make one experience with the types of things that speak to maybe two key personas, right? Maybe somebody who is already on board with the service, or maybe someone who has some doubts about the feature. And so maybe you can try to use words or content that speak to that confidence and or that doubt of like the two different personas. Or you can use personalization, which is an effective strategy to basically create two separate experiences basically for different types of people. And that takes some work with the devs and with the product owners and the whole team and people to create personalized experiences. But it's a very smart, efficient use to basically target people more specifically. So if you know, for example, from someone's user profile that they have been using this product for so long, then you target them with content that is very specific to them being a frequent long-time user, versus someone who just joined. You might target them with things that give them information that they need at the right time for the right reasons. Maybe that long-time user doesn't need that, but that requires you a lot of coordination with the tech folks and with the product owners or project managers. But there's a couple different ways to do that. But I don't know what your thoughts are, Suzanne.
Thanks. Suzanne?
Well, I can't beat that. Yeah. I will say that when you're on the job and you're designing a product, you will design different flows in a product. So, and I think this is what Jessica was talking about. The person who's coming to your product for the very first time is going to have different needs from the person after they come for the first time. They're going to already know, so you don't need to give them a product tour again, that kind of thing.
Right.
And yeah, so I think that's kind of what you said already. Sorry.
Reprise.
Yeah, so again, knowing your customer and being, what I said earlier, obsessed with your customer and all of your customers. And but if your question was specifically to a flow where there are different personas, I think what Jessica said earlier, what do they have in common? What are their common goals? That's what you speak to.
Yeah, maybe more task oriented. Thanks. We've got a question from friend of the show, Destiny. Good to see you here today. And she asks, how do UX writers collaborate with UX designers in research? Would a UX designer work side by side in creating copy for experiences as they go, or hand it off? Suzanne, do you want to start on that one?
Great question.
How do UX writers collaborate with UX designers in research? They do it very carefully and very often. When I went into the office, I sat with my interaction designer, and yeah, I was content designer and they were interaction designers, and we were partners. And we still are partners. It's just that I don't go into an office currently. But we have frequent check-ins. We are always talking about what we're working on. We're always talking about what we want to get accomplished during the sprint. We use Figma, which enables me and my interaction designer to go in and look at the screens at the same exact time. In fact, I can change words right on the screen, and he can watch from his house in San Francisco, and I'm in Sacramento, and I'm typing. Technology is amazing. We are very in sync, and sometimes you have to fight a little bit, like, oh, I want to go off on my own. I want to explore. Go find out like what tab they're exploring on. Go take a peek, because you just kind of want to know. I mean, we're all on the same page here, but you want to know like what they're thinking about, like different ways we can approach how to change the time allotment on a dashboard, for example. What are they thinking? If they're thinking something that is going to require a lot of content, well, yeah, before they show it to the group, you kind of want to know, because you want to know earlier, because you'd like to have a point of view on it. Having a point of view is very important.
Always have at least one. Yes. Jessica, what do you want to add to that? Oh, you're muted again. You're very sweet to keep muting yourself.
There we go. Um, I love the example of sitting side by side or even being virtually side by side and working with your designer. That's the ideal. I think of it in two ways. The overarching way, so like the process, like what does it look like? Ideally, a UX writer or content designer is really there from the very beginning. So in the problem definition space, in the strategy space, and then going into early concepting and wireframing. And hopefully they're involved in various ways. It depends on your constraints and your team structure and all that. But hopefully you're involved at each stage, and that your partners, especially like an interaction designer or a product designer, understand your value and proactively involve you. Sometimes it can be the case where you're playing catch up and reminding folks and things like that. But being involved in each stage through to launch. But I love Suzanne's examples of sort of day to day. What does that look like? For me, that might look like I set up like a weekly sync with a feature designer and be like, okay, what are we working on this week? Obviously, we're in other ceremonies, we're in stand-ups, we're in critiques and other things, but I make sure to be regularly touching base and having those blocks where we're, intentionally looking through things, solving problems, talking about what we're thinking about, maybe editing or writing together and pair writing. But yeah, so it can look different in different ways, but definitely setting that intention and making sure you're on the same page with both your PO and your designers.
Super, thanks. I know another question that I had was, and I know this one might sound a little strange, I'm going to throw it at Jessica first, is how can we read our workplace so we can adapt to the environment and look for opportunities to improve it, especially how maybe content design and writing are treated in our workplace?
Yes, that's something I'm definitely very interested in. I really subscribe to this idea that the UX of a product is a reflection of the organizational structure. So if you have a functional organization and good processes in order, then that's going to be reflected in the experience of the product and ultimately the satisfaction of the customer. And no organization is perfect, as no is a well-oiled machine, but I think it's always important to keep an eye out for those things. And I think there are two key times when you're doing this. Before you join an organization, like when you're job hunting and you're basically interviewing, but also you're interviewing the company, asking good questions about their organization and their process, and noting, trying to read between the lines, because very few folks will be like, yes, we're highly dysfunctional, or we're medium dysfunctional.
We're pretty awful.
But they might... You can read and understand where people are being vulnerable or talking about an honest perception of something, and you ask probing questions about that. Some things like, what does your design team makeup look like? How do you collaborate together? Some of these questions you've even just been asking. How do you involve the UX writer? What happens if you have someone who continually leaves the UX writer out? How would you handle that as a manager? Just like asking these in-depth questions and scenarios that we've seen. How would you handle a designer or a stakeholder who continually doesn't give feedback, but instead just rewrites the copy? How would you handle that? So those are ways to sort of vet.
That question.
That hurts just listening to it.
Yeah. It's just hearing how they respond. And it's okay for an organization not to have all the perfect answers, but to show a willingness to explore and to be open to change is really important. And then the second time when you're really paying attention to that, obviously, is when you're in an org and you're seeing things. Problems that UX writers and content designers talk about all the time are often symptoms of organizational issues. So we have things happen like, you get left out of a meeting that you were supposed to be in, or someone starts concepting without even thinking about the content. And yes, those moments can be viscerally frustrating for a writer who's part of the team. But also, it should be a moment of, okay, but what is going on with the process that enables this? How, why is this happening?
Right.
Be empathetic to the designer. Do they have a pressure that you don't know about? And kind of exploring those things. One specific example, and I'll finish. Obviously, you can tell I'm passionate about this. One specific example of this is the prescriptive writing thing that I just mentioned. A lot of people aren't as practiced in giving descriptive, informative feedback. So what they do is they take a shortcut, which they think is helpful, and that's okay. It's a common thing, which is they rewrite the copy. Here, use this instead. Here's some other options, and that's frustrating for writers for sure, for many reasons. But also, like, why does that happen? And I wrote an article about this in UX Booth that sort of says, like, wait a second, let's see why this happens and how can we solve the problems between why that happens. And I think that's much more helpful than just being like, oh, this is so frustrating, don't do this. So anyway, those are just some examples of that.
Yeah, I mean, each topic we've hit sounds like it could be its own hour-long show. So thank you to both of you for doing the lightning round version. Suzanne, anything to add to what Jessica was just saying about, I guess checking for organizational buy-in and good processes?
Well, let's face it. The reason why a lot of people want to work at companies that I won't mention because it's not important, but you all know who they are, is because their design culture is so evolved. What does that mean? It means that when you join them, they all understand what you do. They all know what you bring to the table. So you don't necessarily have to do a whole lot of evangelizing what you do, trying to beg people to let you do your job.
Yeah.
I have worked at places where they just didn't know what I did. And so it kind of became a situation where my job was to take copy that existed and shuffle it through legal. I have a lot of financial services background, so I've worked with a lot of legal stakeholders, and I was trying to rewrite this product in a way that had a fresh voice that was very, very understanding to people who had just recently lost a loved one. So a very tricky use case. So that's why I took the job. And I got a lot of, well, you've completely rewritten it. We've never written it this way before. So I'm going to ask you to revert it back. And I'm just like, why? We've tested this. People like it. Why? And just to tell you what happened, she did not like that. But that was part of my job. And if you want to be a UX writer, you have to know that a big part of your job is to care about the content. And that includes fighting for the customer. If it tested well, and if that's what you know that the business wants to do, let people know. Let people know your why. You're not trying to be annoying. You're not trying to get in the way of somebody, but you have a reason to wanting to do what you're doing and stand up. And if it doesn't work out, if you just can't come to an agreement. Well, I actually left that job, and now I'm in a job that I love, and they let me do my job, and they let me tell my why, and they listen, and that's important. But I will quickly say that sometimes when you're just getting started, you kind of have to take first job and learn how to evangelize and learn how to stand up for yourself and learn how to explain to people what value you bring. And the better you get at that, the more confident you'll be going forward in your career.
Great, thank you. I think we only have time for one more question, so I apologize to the question that just popped up from LinkedIn and a couple of other on my list, but Charlene and Mithun asked similar questions, so I'm going to put up Mithun's and kind of reword it. So the question would be, with me slightly rewording it, when in a design thinking process lifecycle or user-centered design should we start investing time on content design and strategy? Suzanne? No. Pass.
I strongly suspect Jessica and I will say the exact same thing.
Okay, go for it. 1, 2, 3. No, I'm kidding.
From the beginning.
Yeah.
Right.
Is if you're talking about a problem or a potential problem, the UX writer should be in the room or the content designer should be in the room.
Excellent. Well, that's certainly easy enough. Everybody, start with them from the very beginning of your process. Get them involved, collaborate, don't leave them out. They're on the team, bring them in. So we're
What
pretty
kind of a
much out of
problem is
time.
it? Is it a content problem? Oh, sorry.
Well, it sounds like
I
any
was about to say,
problem.
got to figure out what kind of problem it is. Is it a content problem? What are we solving? Can it be called, is it an interaction problem? Are people not finding a button? Or are people, not aware of a fee that they are charged? I mean, we have to dig into the why people are complaining or why we've decided that this is a problem in the first place. And
Great.
yes, the UX writer should be there.
Excellent. I'm for it as well. So since we only have a few minutes left, before we have each of you give your parting words, where you're also welcome to tell everybody where to find you out on the interwebs and the social webs, and if you have any books or courses or things, I just want to remind people of some of the upcoming shows, especially this week, since we have a extra week planned for you this week. Tomorrow, of course, will be Office Hours Ask Me Anything at 6:30 p.m. Italy time. Wednesday the 28th, I'm proud to announce, as you've been hearing me announce, that Vivian Castillo will be here talking about healing conversations. Thursday the 29th is a rescheduled Michelle Ronson, who will be talking about how to convince stakeholders and other peeps to invest in UX research, which I think we all need. Friday is my Deb Reacts to Crazy Crap stream, and you've all been sending in a lot of crazy crap, so I've got a long list for that. Let's see. Monday the 2nd, Daniel Engelberg will be back talking about increasing your creative capacity. Tuesday the 3rd, Office Hours Ask Me Anything. And Wednesday the 4th, we're going to do a little live brainstorming in Miro. So that's some of what's coming up here on the show. And of course, special thanks to both of you for being part of it. Let me start with Jessica and say, Jessica, any parting words, as well as where can people find you or stalk you or buy something from you or get mentoring or coaching from you?
So many options. Well, I would just say find me on LinkedIn. That's probably where I am fairly active. Jessica, I think you can find me. I think my username is Jessica MH Smith. And I'm also, if you're getting into UX content, you might know about the Content Plus UX Slack. The web address to sign up for that is content and spelled out ux.org. And I'm there a lot. That's a great, great community for conversations and learning and just shooting the breeze for UX content stuff. I am a freelance developmental editor for the UX Writers Collective. I have mentioned, so if you're interested in learning, there's lots of really great options out there, but the UX Writers Collective certainly is known for having some really solid options like fundamentals. And the one that I helped, one of the ones that I helped edit is the technical UX writing course. So it marries technical writing and UX principles for UX writing. So yeah, there's definitely some really great options there and some other things upcoming. So
wonderful. And coaching or mentoring or?
My time is a little bit limited right now, but I always encourage people to reach out and let them know where they met me or heard about me, and we can keep in touch for sure.
Super. Thank you so much for being here. Suzanne, final words and all the places where we can connect with you or throw money at you.
Nothing like that. I am a mentor on ADP List, so you can go to adplist.com and search for me. I did take a break, but I think I'm off my break now. I also have a blog that I intend to make more of a thing. I also have my other interest is comedy, and I do like to write humorous articles about what it's like to do what I do. And you can find me on UX Collective. There's a few of them out there. And I intend to write more, I promise.
Thank you.
But I've been trying to get up to speed with my job. So you know how that is. Yeah. And that's it. And I just, one last thing, I love my job. This is the best job I've ever had. And, I could talk about it all day.
May it always be that. May you always feel that way.
That's Suzanne, +1 to Suzanne's writing. She's funny and an engaging writer about all sorts of things, and yeah, big comedy fan here too.
Excellent,
thank you.
excellent. Thanks to everybody for joining. I'm going to play us out of here. If you have any other suggestions of guests you want me to bring on the show, I know we've got a running list in the Slack channel. deltacx.link/join Slack. That'll dump you right in. Don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube. Usability test that subscribe button and ring the bell. Of course, empathize with the like button. And when the stream is over, leave some comments so that we can get something cooking in the algorithm. We've got lots of thank yous in the chat room. So thanks again to both of you for joining in. And I am going to play us out of here. Everybody, please wear 17 masks. Be safe, and see you tomorrow on the show. Bye. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are